Well, it turns out actually that the pandemic is not gender neutral, as I would say. It actually has differential impacts on men and on women and on boys and girls.
Today on Expert Answers, we're looking at the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on women and girls. Now, you may have heard of some early research that suggests men are more likely to die from COVID-19, but as we'll find out today, women and girls also face unique threats from the pandemic. Well, let's jump right into it. I've got a big question for you. Some might be wondering, people who are tuning into this, they might be wondering why the need to consider the impact of this virus, the pandemic, on women and girls as a distinct issue, a distinct question, separate to the population as a whole.
It actually has differential impacts on men and on women and on boys and girls as a result of a number of factors in terms of their biology and physiology, but also because of their social and economic roles in the different societies in which they live. But there's another set of issues in the health sector that I think are really important, which is that, well, two sets of issues. The first is that more women than men around the world are in the front lines of the healthcare profession, as nurses, as physician assistants, as other frontline workers. In some countries, it's as high as 85 to 90%. Pandemics and crises put tremendous pressure on systems, and it means that services are stretched and capacity may be really thin.
The very next question I wanted to ask you about was that education angle. You know, the bank has worked at securing access to schooling for girls, and we've seen a huge improvement in that over recent years. Are you concerned that this pandemic could, somehow reverse that process, that progress, and how could that, what would that look like, that reversal? And then I would just add one more thing to that, which is how can, governments and institutions respond to that?
In previous crises, what we've learned from Ebola or SARS or H1N1 is that sometimes girls don't return to school. School closures and economic necessity can lead boys and girls to drop out. And depending on what they do, the experience from previous crises is that boys go back quicker and some girls just don't return, either because they're in the labor market or because they have caregiving responsibilities. In many countries, there's a digital divide where boys have greater access to the internet. They might actually monopolize the one computer that's in a poor household's home. And if that's the case, it means that boys may be prioritized over girls in terms of having greater access to learning materials. So it means that girls may actually fall behind in terms of learning opportunities and learning outcomes.
You were talking about the economics of this and how the pandemic, as it potentially pushes the world into recession, how that can particularly affect women. Could you just pick up where you left off?
Because of where women are placed in the economy relative to men, there may be greater differential impacts on women than on men. And I was just noting that in the US, the headline of a recent Washington Post article was that we should name this a she-cession as opposed to a recession. And the reason they say that is because the jobs in the sectors where women predominate are the ones that are first and hardest hit. So what this means is not just higher unemployment, but lack of income and ability to cope. The other thing about the labor force that I think is really important is that around the world, women predominate in informal employment. These are the types of jobs that don't come with fringe benefits like social protection and health insurance and unemployment compensation. And a solution, which I know we'll come to, is to really think about how we extend social protection programs, particularly cash transfers, to those groups of workers. And the final thing that I think is the invisible part, although I think it's very visible right now, invisible because it's not counted, is in the increased demands for caregiving as a result of one, job loss, as a result of school closures, as a result of just taking care of the enormous number of people who are sick and require care.
I wanted to turn to solutions now, and you've talked a little bit about them on a kind of topic by topic basis so far, but I was wondering if you could just kind of give us a broader overview, if governments, if institutions are coming to you for advice, what sort of solutions should they be looking at? What sort of response should they be looking at to try to head off some of these concerns that you've been raising over the past few minutes?
So the first is saving lives. That's really critical. We need to save lives. We need to take all of the social distancing measures. But part of that also means that we need to pay attention to females as the frontline caregivers. We need to reduce their risk of exposure by ensuring that they have the right equipment and the right resources. We need to ensure that women can access health services, and we need to ensure that certain services just are essential and keep going. The second response is really protecting the poor and protecting those who are most vulnerable. It's not just the cash transfers, it's also figuring out how we can help people preserve their jobs and their livelihoods, and can, in a sense, rebuild back better. So how do we build back better? It's strengthening the systems, the social protection systems. It's strengthening the financial system. And the checks and balances, and ensuring liquidity, better bankruptcy regulations, for instance. It's building back better in the sense of having a stronger framework for care, the caregiving that I mentioned, whether it's at the community level, or whether it's what employers provide, or whether it's what the government subsidizes. These are just essential.
Well, Caren, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much for taking your time. I know you got a really busy schedule, so we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Caren Groen is the Global Director for Gender here at the World Bank. A huge thanks to her for taking the time. If you want to learn more about what the World Bank is doing to respond to the coronavirus pandemic, head on over to worldbank.org/coronavirus. Until next time, goodbye.